Hey folks, this is the second video in this section, and this one's going to deal with the secant parent graph. So in order to find the secant parent graph, you're going to want to use the cosine graph to get the 5 major values. Now, if this is the first video you're watching, you should probably go ahead and pause and go back and watch the first video on the cosecant parent, because there's a few extra little tidbits in there. So on my graph, you'll notice that I've already got the cosine parent mapped out, and this is going to follow right along with what we did for the cosecant and the sine pair in the last video. So remember that secant is the same thing as 1 over cosine. So if you'll go to your unit circle and ask yourself, where does cosine equal 0, you'll find that that's going to equal to 0 at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Which are also the x-intercepts. And remember from the last video, anytime you have x-intercepts on the sine or the cosine, these are going to become, the x-intercepts on the sine or cosine are going to become the asymptotes of the cosecant or the secant graphs. So every time I have an x-intercept, let's go ahead and draw an asymptote. And then very much like we did with the cosecant graph, the maximums of cosine are going to become the minimums of secant, and the minimums of cosine are going to become the maximums of secant. So once again here, notice that this is a max of cosine. It's at the top of cosine, and we want to make it the bottom of the secant. So again, make sure that you're getting closer and closer to that asymptote. And then here we have a minimum of cosine. It was at the bottom of the cosine. Now that's going to be at the top of my secant. And then lastly, this is another maximum or top of cosine. We want it to be the bottom of the secant. So then this is one full period of the secant graph.